Hello?
We're here. Just hang on. She's going to introduce us.
Welcome everyone. This is Blue Collar Crypto, part of the World of Ability podcast network. We are here every Sunday at 4 and 5:30 p.m. And I am excited to have both Tim Trozian and Neil Weber joining us this evening for Blue Collar Crypto. So here you go, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the show.
I'm Neil Weber, she said, and this is
Workability,
formerly known as Blue Collar Crypto.
Sure.
And you are Tim? You are?
That's my name, Tim Trozian.
Okay.
And you are?
Neil Weber.
Right. A long and colorful and storied history of our show begins. And we're talking about people's abilities, formerly known as disabilities. What we can expect when we go to the job, what we can expect when people formerly known as disabled become able in the workplace, because they have a workplace that is kinder, is what should we say? What about the workplace is, what are we saying about the workplace when somebody needs certain adjustments made so that they can work there?
Well, George H.W. Bush said he was calling for a kinder, gentler nation, and he was the one that introduced the American with the Disabilities Act. So he had a vision, and his vision was 1,000 points of light. He had a vision for every American having a point of light, being a point of light. And unfortunately, he did not win re-election because he raised taxes. But I really believe in the vision of H.W. Bush.
Okay.
Well, let's bring that down to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and two communities: the Grand Avenue Club of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and where I'm a member, and Outpost National Foods, which is a co-op where I work.
All right, let's do that. You belong to a club.
I do.
And that club is important to you. It's you hold that dearly. You wouldn't know what to do without that club. There isn't another place you can go to.
I have other connections, but it is important to me because I respect the people that go there. Every day they struggle with poverty and mental illness, and I do the same. And I really respect their willingness to get up and face the day where they could just stay in bed.
No. We're talking about poverty and mental illness. They're not mutually exclusive. You're poor and your illness is, there's different kinds of mental illness.
Correct.
Right? Like your mental illness allows you to go out and work a job. But correct. I would think there's some people that can't do that.
That's correct. I know people. 80% of people with who are mentally ill and disabled by it do not work. 70-80%.
Now, that's a great statistic.
It's a very sobering statistic, Tim. Very sobering.
Now, we can make some assumptions, but we got to be careful. Every man has a dream of going out and working for a living. We still believe in, if you're a man, you should be working.
Correct.
And there's no exception, and that there's not an exception for disabled people. They feel the same way.
That's correct. Everyone
Maybe
has a
more
dream.
so.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Everyone has a dream, right?
Everyone has a dream of material prosperity.
Right.
And the mentally ill are no exception.
Yeah, but what does that mean? I mean,
well,
I can pay for my.
I believe it means the basics: food, clothing, and shelter. A roof over your head, food in the refrigerator, and clothes on your back. That's a minimum. I know people that lack that, and I believe that it is not the government's responsibility to provide that. It is when a person cannot. And that is what we have called society. We have a culture where the culture is we have such a rich nation that it should be in a position to provide for basic needs. But I also believe that in the Horatio Algier model, Abraham Lincoln model, where people rose from poverty to become self-sufficient. And I believe that's what I want. I was once middle class because of some challenges I faced in my life, which I will not go into at this time. I fell into poverty, and I've been in poverty for 22 years, but I've been working poor, and now I'm trying to develop a dream, and that dream will lift me out of poverty. It obviously has to include substantial hard work, which I have done. I worked at Amazon third shift. I have worked I currently work as a clerk. I portion meat, peel bananas, portion meat, and pull meat off chicken. And I want to use my talents, and I just have to determine how to best use them at 61 and finding a way to utilize them in a culture which only rewards those that can produce. It is a very driven culture. There's many cultures in the United States. But the culture that I was part of before the onset of disability was sales, and that was a very driven dog eat dog culture. Now I'm part of a culture where it is caring, compassionate, but it doesn't pay well. It doesn't pay a living wage. My job does not pay a living wage, and I come to accept that because in exchange they give me a caring environment. Unfortunately, they do not reward my abilities don't utilize my abilities and therefore they do not compensate me adequately for my time. How is your entrepreneuring going?
Oh, sure. I've been talking about being a handyman.
Correct.
And I get a bite. I get a bite every week.
Good. So
I get a phone call. Hey, can you? There's some things I can do. I say I can do it, or I say I can't do it.
Sure.
If I don't know how to do it, I say no. Sure. If I say, hey, that sounds like I could put that light bulb in for you, get on a ladder, I'll do it. So there you go. You get maybe I say estimate a couple grand a year for that kind of work. Because someday I'll get a job that pays $200, and someday I'll get a job that pays $60.
So how can you maximize your talent and time to find a way to be working 40 hours at what you want to do and earn at least $30,000 a year from that?
It's virtually impossible. But then you're asking me that question, and that's my answer.
That's fine. That's your mindset.
Because you're saying if I show up to work, they're not going to utilize my talent for that 40 hours. If I start my own business, what chances are that I can utilize my talent maybe I have more chances if I'm an entrepreneur.
The question is, what are your skills, Tim? At age 60, what have you defined your skills as opposed to everyone else that wants to be their own boss?
Well, this is not negative or positive, but at age 60, I don't have any skills. the society does not encourage that. It encourages showing up and doing the job that they tell you to do, regardless of your skills.
That's what you experienced over the last 42 years of working.
Right. It's not how we might think. You know, how do they best utilize me? It's how do I best utilize my skills? They want to know, can you do the job? But it may not be matched to your talents. So, and you might not be able to do it. At age 60, you may have less of a chance doing it, but the double-edged sword, the problem is they may not see you as capable at age 60. For a lot of reasons, they may not think they can give you health insurance. They might not want you to be full-time because you're not healthy at age 60. Your health is declining. So they're right there. Your chances of working for them long-term are, at age 60, I would think aren't very good.
So let's talk about
cultures.
Let's talk about okay, I understand what you're saying, and I can have compassion for you because you're in a very difficult position. You're wanting to work, you're wanting to provide food, clothing, and shelter, and you're not finding many opportunities to do that.
Not long-term.
And short-term,
they might not.
Short-term is odd jobs.
Well, short-term might be a temporary jobs that I've been doing it for temp agencies.
Sure.
They might give me 2 weeks or 2 months. But then they switch me from this job to that job, so I don't know where my talents are with that because they keep moving it from company to company. They're doing what they need, a project they need to get done, and once the project's over, they let you go. And what we're saying, Neil, is we want to help people with disabilities enjoy fulfilling, meaningful lives. And a lot of those people are our age.
How do we get? There is a range, Tim. There's a range from age 8. I've met some. I met Taylor's in her early 20s, and she has a disability, mentally ill, and she is eager to contribute. And I'm 61, and I am eager to contribute. I know some people who are in their late 60s who have given up, I believe. And I know people in their 30s and 40s. I know a gentleman who's in his 30s who is a full-time nurse and has mental illness.
And so disproportionately, we're really raring to go, but the employers don't see that.
The question is, can we, in you and I, with this podcast and other efforts, have a culture which challenges the culture which says the disabled person is not a contributor? Can we say that the disabled person has abilities which need to be utilized because they have a right to do that?
Well, the last part is we have a right to do that, but I don't think the employer sees it like that. But we need to move.
I'd have to check on this, but I believe the American Disabilities Act has to guarantees that the employer has to make reasonable accommodations for the disabled individual.
And that's a step in the right direction.
Correct.
So the task is, if you're a midget and you have to reach something really high, they have to give you a footstool.
Correct. My employer makes accommodations for me. I'm not the fastest clerk in the company, but I've been told I have a guaranteed job as long as I want to stay there. But I have decided early on in the position, and I actually have informed my boss, because I read people well enough to know that he won't fire me. I told him early on in the relationship that I was not going to stay there, and he knows that.
He's starting to empty out his refrigerator. Yeah. I mean, I mean, what, Kurt Roscoff is saying to us sometimes is we need to move that needle, making accommodations for the job. But what we're saying is that enough? Are they doing enough? Are the employers doing enough? Or do we have a right to expect more?
What I want is to be put in a position where I have the power to influence others in a company and hire or be in a position to help those who have disabilities. This is something I'm just realizing now. Given that I have a disability and given that I have certain talents, I want to use those talents for good. I could go into sales. That's high risk, high pressure, and requires you to be can require to be a very callous person. I don't want to be that person. I met people like that, and they can be very manipulative. And I know the true salesperson is a person who's very good at building relationships. So I don't know where God wants me to use my skills, but I am going through a Division of Vocational Rehabilitation assessment on June 4th. And I'm going to start this process in the next 6 months of searching out how best to use my skills. And I'm going to do a lot of networking and a lot of researching. And I've done a lot of volunteering over the years, but that doesn't pay. So I'm trying to find a way to utilize networking to help find out what my best skills are and how to find jobs.
Well, I guess let's get real, okay? Let's get real. We're talking about statistics. Well, is this a statistical venture that you have that is going to bear out? Where do you see at this side of the tunnel, coming out the other side of the tunnel? Well, are you going to succeed?
And I'll answer that. You don't know me very well, Tim, but I'm an overcomer. I have faced mental illness and overcome it one day at a time. I take my medication. I do therapy. I work with groups of individuals on spiritual development. I have gone to the Grand Avenue Club, volunteered, raised $5,000 in 3 years, and served on the board of directors and served at every level of the Grand Avenue Club. I have gone to multiple jobs that failed at multiple jobs, and I've currently been at my current job for 2.5 years. And I have faced every obstacle that has been placed before me, and I've succeeded in every one, even though I'm asked to do manual labor, and that is not my gift. My gift is in working with people and verbal reasoning and that kind of skill set, service, communication. And I'm currently peeling bananas, portioning meat, and pulling meat off chicken at a rate high enough to keep my job, fast enough to keep my job.
Okay.
So I have faced the odds and I've succeeded.
Okay, so what does that look like to you? What you're doing now, this is succeeding, right?
Yeah. Well,
what you're doing now is
it is a rung in the ladder. Didn't we start off the conversation talking about that? Having a rung in the ladder.
You're 61 and you're at the bottom of the ladder.
No, I'm where I'm at. And right now yes, what I mean by that is I am a clerk in a grocery store. That doesn't mean that I will always be a clerk in a grocery store at $11.56 an hour for 20 hours a week. What that means is that's what I currently do. But given that I've succeeded at that position, God can, and I can cooperate with God to move up to other positions, but I have to create, not wait for, but create the opportunity with an employer's help, or start working on my own, which in my family, 3 members have successfully done. So I think it's very possible to do that. I may not work 60 hours a week doing that. I may make 30 or 40, but I may be able to pay the bills that way. I have to determine how to best use my time and talent to get my treasure. I have one project that's waiting for me. I'm waiting to get a certain amount of money. When I get that money, I want to start writing. And when I get that writing done, I will be paid $3,000 for that writing.
Okay.
and that's $3,000. The
Um,
question is, how long does it take? So how can I quantify if I spend 40 hours on it? That's $7 an hour. But if I spend 20 hours on it, that's $14 an hour. But the real issue is not dollars per hour. The question is, how much money can I make so that I can use that then go to a publisher and say, here's the book, will you publish it? And they publish it. How many books can I sell? And then here's the real key. How can I utilize that reputation to get better, larger paying jobs?
okay. And even if I play devil's advocate with you,
That's fine. Go
even
ahead.
if I go, yeah, even if I'm asking you to defend and support what's your hypothesis, and I can't ignore the fact that you love to write and that it's a dream of yours and you're pursuing it, and that means you're an entrepreneur.
No, right now what I'm doing is pulling meat, portioning meat, pulling chicken, and what I've done is experience poverty at the lowest level. I actually lost my car last October, as you may be aware. Now all the listeners are aware, due to irresponsibility. And so I'm realizing that the bus, Uber, and walking is not a fun way to communicate, transport. It's very time consuming and it's very demeaning. I have a car that I need to get access to again, and I need to relearn responsibility. And what I want to do is to create wealth from that. I want to tell my story. I've been told by a friend who's known me for 25 years that he would think I should write a book, and maybe I will.
Use this show as a launching pad to publish your book, publicize it here.
This show can do many things, but this show is 15 to 30 minutes of service to undefined audience, but really it is an opportunity for you and I to get to know each other and develop a rhythm so that we can constantly share with each other our dreams and hopes and desires and communicate that to a larger audience that may find meaning in that and say, hey, I can relate to these two gentlemen and I'd like to do the same.
Well, as we're a work in progress, as we develop and we create,
everyone is a work in progress.
Well, I'm talking about you and I, and then this show.
Correct.
As we talk, we're creating, and our good friend Kirk does this a lot with people. He connects people as they communicate, and we can promote, and with funds from the show, we can promote your book. We may be able to give the book away for free and pay you from the show's proceeds.
Well, let's focus on one step at a time. First of all, let's continue to communicate a message every week. Then secondly, let me get enough money to buy a printer and a computer so that I can write this book. Thirdly, then let's talk about the book on the show, because it's a beautiful story. I don't think I've told you about this yet, but a beautiful story about my parents. One grew up in the Philippines and had a very leisurely life for 10 years and had 3 servants and 2 parents. And she then was interred in a prison camp for 3 years, and she had to eat fish heads. And when the Japanese, the brutal captors, found out that fish heads were healthy for they took them away. So she had 10 years of leisure, followed by 3 years of excruciating pain. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm right here. We could tell our stories.
You could tell your story. You could tell your story about your uncle and your nephew, who faced a disability and overcame it.
Right. I grew up my mom raised us on $7 an hour, 3 boys by herself. Back in the day when union wages were 20 or $30, maybe. Who knows? She made 7, and she she had to, when there were things I needed to get paid, I asked my mom, and she'd say, we can't do that. She doesn't have a single cent left over.
Okay.
And so I grew up in relative poverty, but I had a lot of good, I had mentors. I had men that I looked up to in my social. She put me in good situations with good people, even though we were really poor. I went to substandard schools growing up with substandard kids. I looked at some of these other kids. They went to better schools, had both parents working. They could afford nice shoes where I couldn't. So I think our message with you, Neil, and me is a message of hope.
Correct. Faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love.
If connect with people, we've done a lot right there.
I think the main thing that people want is they want to know how in everyday life to take their talents and their time and create prosperity. And they want to know how faith, hope, and love can transmit into food, clothing, and shelter. That's my message. What do you think about that?
I think we have a chance at it. I think they want specifics, so we're going to have to point them, hey, this is exactly what you should do. Do this, do this, do this. And then we're laying the foundation for that now. This is how you feel.
You're right. What I believe is that people are persuaded by stories. So I want to tell my story and my parents' story and my grandparents' story on both sides. And I would encourage you to write down and start sharing your stories, because I think those stories are powerful and they convey faith, hope. And I think that is what moves people is faith, hope, and love.
Well, my story is I rolled from spot to spot. I excelled. I got a letter to one of the best schools, public universities, University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I did not succeed the way I thought I would. It took me a long time to get an undergraduate degree, and then I didn't get a standard job out of college that you might want. Instead of getting a nice job with, good paying, I worked in factories. My standard is being below the standard. My story is being below the standard. I think you alluded to when you started. You thought you would succeed at a certain level and you didn't. Well, I understand. I thought I would succeed at a certain level and I did not. So for those that are listening, take some solace from Neil and Tim that you may not be succeeding at the level you think you should be succeeding at. You may call that a disability or you may call that something else. But there's hope in the stories that we tell, and we'll keep telling these stories and more in the future. Go ahead.
What I think, is very important, very essential, is that people discover who they are. Because I have one quote I've collected a lot. I've started collecting quotes from motivational speakers. I just started that this week. And one quote I have is, you don't get what you want, you get what you are. And I think that's very critical to understand, that it is our character that defines what we get, not what we want. Everyone wants something from life, but the question is, are you willing to give something in exchange for that? And are you willing to become something in exchange for that?
Okay, let me add to that. We don't get what we want. Well, we get what we ask for, and then we have to learn how to ask for it. And that involves a little self examination to find out, ask ourselves, what do we want, and how do I get what I want, and how do I ask for that thing that I want? Okay, where do I go? Where are my resources to get that thing that I want? How come I'm not getting it? What should I be doing differently? And so you're saying, I just tried to expand a little bit in my words, is I know what I want, I just don't know how to get it.
And I think the answer comes through a couple things: faith, prayer, reflection, and experience. I'll just share with you what just happened to me. I took a bus somewhere because of my transportation issue, and I got off the bus. And the reason I was late for the podcast, which I don't like, I abhor being late for things. I'm never late to work. So I abhorred being late to the podcast. And what happened was I dropped some apples because the bag broke. That is one element of poverty. And my poverty comes from irresponsibility. And so I have to ask myself, am I going to be self-reliant or reliant on others? And in my whole life, I've always relied on others because of some character flaws. And now I found that everyone has limits. Magnum Force, which is a great movie produced by Clint Eastwood, is a great man. He had a very good quote. He said, "Every man must face his limitations." So when I expect things from others, and if I expect things from the federal government, every person, every government has limitations. And so the question is, I have limitations too, but I can control my limitations by hard work, sacrifice, dreaming, and having a vision for myself. I have 5 goals: spiritual goals, physical goals, intellectual goals, emotional goals, and financial goals. I think the core of it is having them large enough so they take a lifetime to live, and then setting them on a daily basis so that I can know every day. Dale Carnegie says that we should live in, he was a great man, and he says, live in tight compartments, meaning live daily and live out your daily tasks. That's all we're given, is one day at a time, which is the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous philosophy.
Well, what if our listeners just want to know? What do they want to know?
Well, we don't know, because we don't know. We haven't done, okay, that is what you're called market research, and that is not possible for us to do. So what we can do is have a running conversation. And when we get to the point where we are in a network where we know our audience, then we can ask that question. But right now, given the constraints of a voluntary experience, we do not know what our listeners want to know.
So let's keep rolling the ball along. Let's get to know our audience. Let's get them on here. Let's talk to them, because you and I talking to each other is great, but our market research is going to be, we go to the market and talk.
Well, then tonight,
see what they say.
When we're done after this conversation, I need to have a conversation with Sue and Kurt, and I need to ask them some questions. And maybe you just prompted one question. Kurt has 10,000 contacts. Can some of those people be invited to be on the show? So we're not simply talking to each other, but we're talking to an audience of people, and they also share. Tim and Kurt had invited some people recently, and I want to be open to having a community forum and not just the Neil and Kurt and the Neil and Tim show, because we're only a small microcosm of the world. I want to reach a larger audience, and to reach a larger audience, we need to have a bigger message. And the bigger message is defined by how many we serve.
Well, how do we get on a very large, unexamined, how about a very sloppy, how do we get what we want? With, how does a disabled person, or even a person that, is having trouble in the workplace, how does that person get assertiveness? How do they assert themselves in the workplace so they can achieve more? Do they, what makes a successful person in the workplace? Because ultimately we are talking about going to work, punching in on time, doing a good job. So what is it that we can get our listeners what is it we can provide our listeners so that they have an easier time?
I
So
think
we
can tell them, we can tell them the qualities of success. And I think the qualities of success come from character. And I think character comes from attributes that, generosity, love, faith, hope, hard work. I think we could study, in our non-show time. I'm considering, because it's just as ongoing conversation we're having here. I consider studying some of these, character qualities and seeing how people can incorporate them into their lives so that when they're asked to do things, they can respond and know how to be successful by implementing these character strengths.
And what are we going to do with Kurt more specifically?
We're going to ask him to interact with an audience and not just the two of us and see how he responds.
Because I think that would make our show very dynamic.
I agree.
Hear different points of view.
I agree. I think it would be great to have a community forum in which every week one person leads the discussion and other people follow.
Right. Okay. It's a work in progress, Neil.
Yes, this is
I'm glad that we're doing.
This is not a static experience. This is a dynamic, growing experience, and we will continue to grow this show. But I would like to grow it in listeners, not just in quality. I think we're growing in quality as we continue to get to know each other and continue to get to know what it means to be a successful podcaster. But I think we should also try to grow the audience so that it is a larger audience. And I think part of that means having a larger community that is on the show.
Does this? Can you compare this to something we're going to create? Can you compare that to something you've seen before?
No, podcasting is new to me. I've never experienced podcasting before. And all this is like a radio interview where we're on a radio, because we are essentially on a radio, and we're having a conversation. And I have interviewed people in print media, and that's similar to that. So I think all this is a conversation between two people, and we're searching each other out and finding out, each other's unique characteristics, and then sharing that with the audience.
Okay, then. I think we've had a great show.
We're not done yet. We got a couple minutes left. We're going to go to 6:30, is my understanding. Is that what you understand?
Oh, of course.
Okay, let's go to 6:30. I started late because of my transportation difficulties, and normally we go to 6. I'd like to go to 6:30 to give the audience the benefit of our experience. I like to share our experience, strength, and hope. That's what I believe is essential to a good podcast.
So let's paraphrase Neil and Tim here. For myself,
okay,
I've never felt that I lived up to a potential. Now that I'm 60, I'm trying to start my life all over again. I think podcasting is the way to do it. Well, that's what we're doing right now. So I'm getting satisfaction from this. I'm lucky to have you, Neil.
Sure.
I'm lucky that you're here. I'm honored, and it makes my dream come true of using my talents and feeling that I'm worthy. And so at 60, I'm starting over again. So now it's your turn. What's your take?
My point of view is this. This is a new experience. I found this opportunity through my friend Kurt Roskoff, because I had volunteered with him in the past in other experiences like I can't think of the name right now, but a community-based experience where we went places and we did physical labor. But now this is new because this is worldwide, or can be worldwide. And what I'm trying to finding out is that what we're doing is very popular. Podcasting is replacing the traditional news media, and many people are seeking it as a way to make an income. Now, we're not doing that. We're doing this as volunteers. And we'd been looked into possibility of paying into a system called Braveheart TV, and we chose not to do that. There is also Mark TV, which I don't know if there's any cost to that. So I would like to explore what other opportunities, but those would require a much higher level of sophistication and service than this experience offers. And I don't know whether, I'm not sure that the two of us are prepared to do that.
Well, I'm willing to have those discussions, but I'm not worried about the product. I think our product is solid. I'm not going to bow to anybody who's better at what we're doing than what we're doing. We're the best. And I think time will tell. Time doesn't rule it doesn't produce anything. It just moves. But if we can punctuate time with results and some action, we'll get there. We will succeed.
Okay, let's turn this over to Sue because our time has run out. We need to close.
Thank you so much. We have Neil Weber and Tim Trozian joining us here, 5:30 p.m. on Sundays. Awesome insight, great conversation. We appreciate you guys very much. I definitely look forward to next week, same time, same place. This is part of the World of Ability Podcast Network. And as always, we are so pleased to be able to bring these conversations forward. Until next week, we thank you.
Sue?